Hey guys, we are going to wrap everything up now in part two of lesson 19, modern art. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, it's getting weird. Okay. Alrighty, so we left off with abstract art. We had just finished up with futurism. And yeah, let's get into our abstract art. So, after World War II, New York became the new hub for the art world. So there was a lot of people fleeing from Europe at that time point. And so the new sort of like center for the art became New York from what was originally France. This established a lot of the abstract art that we saw coming from that time period that ultimately helped us form what modern art is in our history today. It was not entirely new. Non-figurative art had always been around in many forms, so like calligraphy, Islamic patterns, etc. However, it was in the last century that it was transformed from a decorative art into a fine art movement. Really, there's a couple more, but we can group it into these three main styles of abstract expressionism, suprematism, and minimalism. And I think this should actually say constructivism instead of suprematism. So I'm sorry about that. This actual slide will say constructivism. Abstract expressionism, this we want to look for large canvases covered and smeared in blobs, swirls, and splatters of paint. One of our main artists from this time period is Jackson Pollock, and you maybe have seen a splatter painting that looked kind of like that before, and maybe thought, I could do that. That's something that I could see myself doing. However, Jackson Pollock and a lot of these abstract artists were trying things that had never been done before. They were experimenting, they were playing with things, and just trying to see what could be considered fine art and where art could go. And so it's sort of like the way back in a very earlier video when we're talking about the banana taped to the wall in that recent exhibition. This is sort of like that, where you know it could be done maybe by anyone or maybe by a lot of people, but Jackson Pollock was the first one to do it. Constructivism, this is going to look like compositions with very flat geometric shapes and primary colors, always a little bit asymmetrical. You may have seen a painting that looks like this is by the artist Mondrian. Very like reducing our elements and principles to like very simplified forms, um, such as this. So it's sort of like taking like more and more out of like the abstract part where there's still a reference to the natural and more into just pure non-representational art. And then lastly, we have minimalism. Minimalism resisted medium specific forms of art, so it rejected the conventions of traditional painting and sculpture. It's based loosely on three dimensionality. And really, what we see with minimalism is we're stripping away all signs of personal expression, all about materiality and simplification. And it falls directly before this idea of conceptual art. So this piece here, I feel like sums up what minimalism is really all about. It's called Three Chairs, and it is showing you a actual three-dimensional chair, a photograph of a chair, and a definition of what a chair is. So it's really just stripping things back to their most basic form and then bringing it into the gallery for examination. Little, very, kind of meta, like weird, but again, hadn't been done before. So we're analyzing things in a way that we have not before. Then we have this movement called Dada art. Dadaism is, by definition, by Tristan Tzara, um, one of the leaders of the Dada movement. He says Dada means nothing. This is a response to the anger artists felt about the aftermath of World War II. Dada is about rebellion, absurdity, and anarchy. Because they thought, and I'm sorry, this should say World War One, not World War II. That timeline doesn't make sense. World War One, Dada is about rebellion, absurdity, and anarchy. Because they thought modern life to be meaningless, they made art that had to do with no meaning, almost like it's sort of like mocking the art world in a way. Their anti-art, it's fueled by their pessimism and nihilism to defiantly declare their works anti-art. If their predecessors were breaking conventions on the canvas, the Dada artists just ripped the canvas apart. They replaced the canvas with a urinal. They defaced with a mustache and a goatee a reproduction of the Mona Lisa. Dada is a challenge for its audience to define what makes art, how art should be made, and what art should be appreciated. So this story, or this next piece here that we're going to look at, which is this is known as a ready-made, this urinal. This is a piece by Marcel Duchamp, who was, and again, these Dada artists, they were so far rejecting the art world that they didn't even want to be called anything. Um, Marcel Duchamp was a very well-known painter and photographer. And because of the way that he felt, he just felt that the art world was not something that we should be concerned about really at this point in time. It was more we needed to be concerned about the politics and the economy and the state of the world essentially. But there were these elite art people that were still just like involved in their own little space, this little exclusive spot. And so sort of out of rejection of that and also just sort of make a mockery of, what they were valuing above these other real things. He was on his way to the show and he found this in an alley and brought the urinal in, put it on a pedestal, signed his alias name, R. Mutt, and the year, and then asked people to discuss it and have discourse about it just like any of the other artworks. This, as you can imagine, was not taken well on its first debut night. People were very upset about this, very just they were not happy that he had done this. So it's really the Dada period is about this irreverent humor. It was always a theme in their work. Dada artists relied on madness and absurdity to shock their audience, just like with the urinal piece. And I actually saw this piece earlier this year. It's in this really tiny museum in Maryland, and it is what it looks like. But it's really cool to see it in person. It's just amongst all this other artwork, and it's just on its own little pedestal there. Um, but yeah, it is what it sounds like. It's just a urinal on a pedestal. This is known as what is a ready-made, which is when you bring something that is already fabricated from the outside world into the gallery world to examine it in a new light. Um, just like the banana taped to the wall in the video we watched earlier this semester. And this piece, it's like when it's in its own environment, like where it's naturally supposed to be at, you don't really think about it day to day. But when it's brought into the gallery and put on that pedestal, it causes you to like it forces you in a way to question it and to think about its meaning. We also see a lot of collages and disturbing photo montages. And in a lot of the paintings that we see from the Dada movement, we look for this Dada cyborg. It's this disturbing kind of like man machine fusion type thing. It's very, very weird. But in a lot of the paintings, we'll see him pop up. Now, this is on to our part two of modern art. And we're going to talk about surrealism, pop art, feminism art, and earth art. So, surrealism art, we see this coming in the 1920s by Andre Breton, who defined surrealism as psychic automaticism in its pure state, by which one proposes to express verbally by means of the written word or in another manner, the actual functioning of thought. Sought to channel the unconscious as a means to unlock the power of imagination. So surrealism art, we see a lot of fantasy slash dream-like imagery. Usually some things are recognizable, but they are distorted in strange scenarios. And lots of surrealist filmmakers from this time, which is a new type of art that we haven't really seen before. But a lot of this artwork is just like, it seems like it's dreams, but there's something a little bit off. There's always a reference to the natural and, what is real, what exists in reality, but it's distorted, exaggerated in ways that just make it kind of feel like, when you're in your dream, and this might be something that you see in your dream that kind of makes sense, but also doesn't kind of make sense. Um, and again, yeah, lots of film comes from this time period too. It's a very experimental time, but very cool artwork is made from here. Pop art, This comes post World War II, actually World War II this time. And it's based on loosely American consumer commodity booms, where we see all of these like advertisements and visuals that are, kind of pushing these products on us. Pop's visual vocabulary merged high art and popular culture. Some artists to look at are Andy Warhol, Roy Lichtenstein, Keith Haring, David Hockney, and Jasper Jones. So how do we know that pop art is pop art? We see a lot of printmaking. It's very popular because, like consumer products, it can be made in multiples. The subject matter includes celebrities, logo products, like the Campbell soup can painting that we've seen before. Andy Warhol, I think, has a really interesting take on, what this pop art is all about. It's, he does replicate a lot of the products that we already see, like the Campbell soup cans and Kellogg boxes and things. But he also does this with very well-known celebrities, in particular Marilyn Monroe. He has a very famous series with her where he's kind of talking about how people, in a way, are almost a consumer product themselves, celebrities and, these famous people. I would say, like, in today's era, that equivalent is like the Kardashians, for example, like the influencer age, where, anything that a lot of what we consume, what we watch, what we interact with every day is celebrities. And, anything that they say, we naturally want to follow because they're the people that we're looking at and that are advertising these things to us. So a lot of the artwork is like the prints of Marilyn Monroe that are repeated over and over and over again, like a product. In the 1960s, we see feminism art. Feminist artists worldwide set out to reestablish the founding pillars and reception of contemporary art. The movement inspired change, reshaped cultural attitudes, and transformed gender stereotypes in the arts. So, how do we know that artwork is from the feminist period? I think that this one's kind of a challenging one. It's not one type or style. These artists embraced alternative materials that were connected to the female gender to create their work, such as textiles or other media previously little used by men, such as performance art and video art, where they did not have the same historically male dominated history that painting and sculpture carried. Many feminist artists explore not only their gender identity through their art, but also their racial, queer, disabled, and other aspects of the world, aspects of identity that inform who they are in the world. This picture that I have here is of Judy Chicago and Miriam Shapiro, who were two very famous feminist artists in the 1960s and 70s. And they founded this house they called Woman House in 1972, which is just this big this space for female artists to come and to make work and to collaborate. And yeah, it was a very, very almost the building in itself was an art piece for what it was doing, and the what it was producing essentially. But this is a very, very interesting movement, and I would highly recommend for a lot of your different themes that you might be considering looking into feminism art. And lastly, we're going to talk about earth art. Earth art comes from, it can also be referred to as land art or earthworks. This movement was about an outgrowth for conceptualism and minimalist. It's art that reflects the beginning of the environmental movements and the rampant commoditization of the American art in the late 1960s. So this is almost like talking in the same way that pop art is, but like on another totally different side of it, where pop art is like, yeah, we're going to go all out with the colors and the, printmaking and the, commodity aspect. This is like we want to get back in touch with nature and making art from nature. Artists in this movement were philosophical and okay with the idea that their artworks may not remain permanent. So a lot of this work is made from natural, materials. And so it's not really meant to stay around forever, stay, the same way forever. This is the Spiral Jetty, and it is one of the probably most famous earthworks that is still around today. How do we know that earthworks are, or that earth art is earth art? What does it look like? There is a heavy focus on found objects, specifically materials found in nature, such as rock, leaves, trees, limbs, etc., and performance. It's even better if the materials were local to the installation site to indicate the rebirth of the landscape. But this is essentially just manipulating what nature already offers us in a way that there's this interaction with man and nature, almost like harmonizing. It's not being destructive, it's not changing it in a way that is unnatural, but it's sort of connecting this relationship and trying to, create harmony within that. So that brings us to the end here. I know that was a lot of those. I would also uh, just ask, or just if you feel like this will be helpful for you, these are other collection options for our final project. If you want to like take a screenshot of this, or maybe just pause the video here to get a few of these, or just go back into the PowerPoint if you'd like to on Blackboard to write some of these down. Um, but yeah, I hope that this is helpful for you to get an idea of some of the art movements that you can use for your final project. If you want to go beyond, what we've talked about together or beyond this list, maybe just shoot me a quick email and make sure that it's okay to use for a collection. But otherwise, that is the end of our art history unit. And I hope you guys enjoyed all of our time together. And I wish you the best of luck on your final project and the rest of your semester.